Hey guys, and welcome to another video. If you are new here, my name is Katie and I do young mom lifestyle videos. I used to do pregnancy videos, so if you're interested in those, go ahead and check out all of the other videos I've done. I'll have links down below in the description as well for you guys. So this is the official birth story video. I just put bless you. I just put Carter down for a nap. We went out really early this morning, and he did not get in the morning to afternoon nap that he usually gets in, so it's kind of late and he's fussy. So hopefully we can get through this video. So my birth story kind of starts in April, because all of April I was having contractions that were about 7 minutes apart at the least, and I would have them pretty much all day. I got a couple hours breaks here and there, but pretty much I was in labor for all of April, which really sucked. It came around to the end of April and I started getting the contractions closer together, but they really weren't that bad. So then May came around. It was, well, let's see, I want to say it was May 3rd or 4th. It was May 4th. May 4th, my contractions got to 4 minutes apart for lasting 1 to 2 minutes. So we went into the clinic and I was 90% effaced and 2 centimeters dilated. I would not dilate. They kept me there at the hospital for another hour after that, just for me to walk around and have juice to see if I would dilate more. While we were at the hospital, the contractions went from 3 minutes apart to 2 minutes apart. And they got worse. My uterus was hurting, I was cramping, it was hard to walk, my legs felt like jelly. But they ended up sending me home to labor, although the next day I had an appointment with my OB. So I'd be able to check my dilation and go over maybe induction, because at this point it was 3 days past my due date, which was May 1st. So we scheduled an induction for that next Saturday, because they do want to at least wait till 41 weeks until they induce you. However, they ended up calling me the next day and telling me they'd like me to come in not that Saturday, but that Thursday. However, since I was really softened, there wasn't really a lot of work they had to do. They didn't have to soften my cervix and help me dilate. That we really only needed to work on the dilating part. So on Thursday, May 6th, we ended up going into the hospital at 6:30 p.m. They wanted to start me right away on Pitocin, but I had already talked to my OB previously about doing a Cook's balloon, which is non-hormonal and it isn't really invasive. It's basically a balloon that they stick, it's 2 balloons that they stick inside your cervix to help push and pull on it so that it dilates bigger. They didn't want to give me that at first, but then once they checked my cervix and realized how soft it was and that I wasn't dilating, they gave me the okay to use the Cook's balloon. Keep in mind, when I went in for the induction, from that Tuesday to that Thursday, I was still having contractions about every 2 minutes apart. So I went into my induction already having contractions and kickstarting labor. So I had that Cook's balloon in for 12 hours, and they told me that it's very rare to get to 5 centimeters with the Cook's balloon in. I was already at 2 centimeters, and that if you do get to 5 centimeters, the Cook's balloon usually just falls out on its own, and they assumed it would just because my cervix was soft as it was. That was not the case. I had to keep that thing in for the full 12 hours. This thing is not comfortable. It helps push contractions, makes contractions worse, and it's just this awkward thing, you know, down there in your legs. It's really weird to go pee with it, and it was just an uncomfortable situation. The Cook's balloon came out, and they checked my cervix, and I was, I believe at -1 station and 5 centimeters dilated. My cervix was pretty much completely soft at this point. So they were really hopeful that I would have the baby that day, if not that night. I think it was about 8 o'clock in the morning when it was taken out. So after they took it out, they ended up starting me on Pitocin as well. From 8 o'clock in the morning to, 8 o'clock in the morning to, I want to say, 4 o'clock at night, well, in the evening, I went 5 centimeters dilated to 6.5 centimeters dilated. At 6.5 centimeters dilated, I ended up getting an epidural. The contractions were getting worse, but they weren't awful yet, so I wanted to get it before the pain got too bad. And once the epidural kicked in, this is kind of where things got a little bit more difficult. I couldn't really get out of bed, obviously, because my legs were pretty much numb down there. I could feel things, but I would need help to move my legs and reposition myself. We did the peanut ball, I got on my knees and got up on my hands on the bed, so the bed was like straight up, and I had my hands up here and my legs down here. So we did a bunch of different positions to help me dilate, because that was really the only thing I was missing. If only we had known why I wasn't dilating to begin with, I think this whole process of labor would have been so much more smooth and less painful. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that my water had broken right after I got the epidural put in. We had a scare that we thought my water had broken before I had the epidural, but it was just random fluid. The real thing happened right after. So from 6.5 dilated to getting my epidural and my water breaking, a few hours later I was getting really bad contractions, and I shouldn't be really feeling them, and I could feel them really good in my lower back, my hip, and down my leg. So it was not a fun experience. I had to get my epidural up 2 times, and because I could feel literally everything. In the beginning it was working and I couldn't even feel the cervix check, but then once I started getting more of the epidural from the anesthesiologist, then I could feel all the pressure. It felt like burning, it hurt, and I really just wanted the pain to go away. I was so ready for Carter just to come out at that point. And every time they give you a button to press so you can like give yourself a dose of epidural, and every single time I would stare at the light, because it's red when you're not supposed to, when you can't take it because you can pretty much kill yourself, and it turns green when it's okay for you to press the button. So I would watch the light turn from red to green, and I would push the button immediately because I was just so much pain. 19 hours after my water broke, I really, really wanted to push to the point where I almost couldn't control it. Like, he was going to come out. So the doctor came in and checked me. I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. He was in the birth canal, ready to go. However, a piece of my cervix was swollen. So what we tried to do is push not me, my OB obviously, try to push that piece out of the way of his head. So we pushed for 15 minutes to try and get his head around that piece of my cervix, but it was not working. So he was pretty much down there. I could feel him. I'm sure if I reached down and touched, I could feel him or something. I don't know. There was just so much pressure, and it felt so good to finally be able to push. However, after that, she said we can't push anymore because she's afraid what will happen. So I rested for about half hour, to see if my cervix would go down, and tried a couple more birthing positions to also help the dilation a little bit more, because I was at 9.5. You can push at 9.5. You don't necessarily have to push at 10. I was a little bit confused at that too, but that's what happened. So then she came in a half hour later and checked my cervix again. And the whole time it was excruciating, trying not to push and trying not to tear anything. And I was pretty terrified, but I was in pain. So when she checked again, this time a whole side of my cervix was swollen, and I had gone from 9.5 centimeters dilated to 8 centimeters dilated. This is where she stopped and she said, "We're gonna have to have a C-section because it's been 19 hours since your water broke. You are starting to hemorrhage. If we try to push this baby out, you're gonna tear your cervix." And I wasn't dilated enough anymore to even push. Signed a bunch of papers to authorize the C-section, and from the 10 minutes it took them to get the anesthesiologist in the room to get me prepped and ready to go, it was the longest 10 minutes of my life, because I really wanted to push him out, but I couldn't. Otherwise, I would have completely destroyed myself. During the C-section, I was vigorously shaking, like really bad. I was freezing. I had also hemorrhage, so I lost a lot of blood, and I was also profusely vomiting, not just on myself, but all over Casey as well. I don't know how he handled that because it was pretty disgusting. At one point I looked at him and said, "I'm sorry," but they're all like, no, it's okay, it's okay. And with an epidural, you feel more when they're doing the C-section than if you had a spinal tap. I think that's what it's called. So unfortunately, I could feel every tear and tug and pull, and I could feel his head completely come out of my pelvis, and that was not a great feeling. When he finally came out, he pretty much had a head on top of his head, and everybody else said, "Oh, he's beautiful," and the first thing that I said was, "Oh my god, his head," because it was really bad. If you've seen the birth vlog, there is a picture of his head when he came out at the end. So if you're curious about that, just go back and watch that video, and there's a picture of how ginormous his head. That is pretty much why the entire time I was not able to have a natural labor, because he was entirely too big for me to even push out. His head was too big, his body, just everything. He was 9 pounds, 2 ounces, 22 inches long, and his head was about 37, is it 37 centimeters or inches?
Centimeter.
About 37 centimeters around. So he was a pretty big baby. Once he came out, my stomach pretty much went flat too, because he was all of my stomach. There wasn't really much else there. It definitely wasn't the birth that I had planned, and it was very unexpected. Of all things though, even my doctor, we all thought he was going to be smaller than that, and we thought that the labor would go by much faster just because of how long I was contracting for. But that was not the case. My pregnancy was pretty rough, and so was labor. I wasn't expecting it to, but he is the sweetest baby, and he does really good with sleeping and giving us cues of what he needs, so we couldn't be more proud of him, and we couldn't love him any more than we do. Yeah, we love you. We love you. It was really hard to kind of process that, the first day. Feeding was really difficult as well. We actually had to stop breastfeeding while we were in the hospital because it was too much for my body to handle going through labor and a C-section, and then trying to breastfeed a baby as well, especially because he needed to eat more than I could even give him. So the hospital gave us formula for him to eat while we're there. And then once I got home, we did pumping for the first week, I would say, until my milk came in, but we're still working on the breastfeeding. That's really it for the birth story. Thank you guys so much for watching. I now need to put him down in his bassinet because he's finally falling asleep. I will see you guys next week on Sunday because we have a new video release day. So I'll see you guys then.
I was never the one to write up a song for just anyone. I was always the one